Have you ever felt like someone is pretending to be your friend, while secretly undermining you? Or worse, have you ever realized that someone who claims to care about you is pushing you down with every word and action? It's tough to face, but what if I told you that there are hidden signs people use to disguise their dislike for you, and most of us miss them? In this video, we're diving deep into the subtle, and often unnoticed, ways people can show their true feelings without you realizing it. By the end, you'll know exactly how to spot these signs, so you can protect your self-esteem and save yourself from toxic relationships. Why should you stick around? Knowing how to identify these behaviors will help you create boundaries that protect your peace, your value, and your energy. I'll show you how to recognize backhanded compliments, subtle exclusions, and even the ways people manipulate your emotions while pretending to be a friend. Trust me, once you understand these signs, you'll never look at your relationships the same way. So, if you're ready to take control of your friendships, stop settling for less than you deserve, and start building the healthy, supportive relationships you've always wanted, keep watching. This is about more than just spotting red flags. It's about reclaiming your power. Let's get into it. If you are not subscribed, I recommend subscribing and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support means a lot to me, and if you enjoyed this video, you can help me continue spreading the valuable lessons by liking and sharing it. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. If you don't, please comment 0 to let me know how I can improve and make better videos for you. Now, let's begin. 1. They're always joking about your flaws. We all know that one person, the one who can never resist cracking a joke, especially when the punchline is at your expense. It starts innocently enough, right? They poke fun at your quirks, your mistakes, even the small imperfections that everyone has. "Oh, come on, I'm just messing with you," they'll say, offering a smile that's meant to ease any discomfort. At first, it seems harmless, almost like a light-hearted part of your relationship. But let's not deceive ourselves for a second. These jokes aren't just innocent teasing. No, they're more than that. They've calculated digs, wrapped in the veil of humor, designed to chip away at your self-worth piece by piece until you start to wonder if maybe, just maybe, there's truth in their words. I remember a time when I was close to someone I thought was a friend. This person had a habit of making jokes about me, how I dressed, how I spoke, and even the work I was doing. At first, I brushed it off. It seemed like nothing more than playful banter, something you could laugh about together. But as time passed, I began to notice something troubling. The jokes never celebrated anything positive about me. No, they were always focused on my weaknesses, the things I could be doing better, the things I couldn't quite get right. It wasn't long before I started questioning myself. I found myself wondering if those flaws they pointed out were truly as glaring as they made them seem. Could it be that I was the problem all along? Here's where it gets even more complicated, more painful. Those who repeatedly joke about your flaws aren't doing it out of love. It's not affection, it's a test to see just how much disrespect you'll tolerate. It's a subtle yet powerful form of manipulation, a way for them to assert control and remind you, without words, that you're not quite up to par. These comments are a means of putting you in your place, all while they sit in a position of supposed superiority. And the worst part? They get away with it because society has conditioned us to think that if we can't take a joke, we are the ones with the problem. But that's a lie, one that I've had to learn the hard way. There's absolutely nothing wrong with standing up for yourself when a joke crosses the line. It's not just okay, it's essential. You have the right to be surrounded by people who lift you, celebrate your strengths, and help you work through your weaknesses without ever making you the punchline of their humor. I've witnessed this so many times. People allowing these kinds of jokes to slide, telling themselves it's easier to laugh along than confront the discomfort. But let me tell you something important. Allowing others to disrespect you, even in the guise of a joke, is a dangerous road to walk. The more you tolerate it, the more it becomes a pattern, until you're left questioning your worth, feeling small and insignificant, all because you didn't want to seem too sensitive. I'll admit, I've been there too. I thought I was being gracious, keeping the peace, trying not to make waves. But in doing so, I was permitting them to keep pushing. I was complicit in my mistreatment. It wasn't until I started setting boundaries, speaking up, and saying, "No, this isn't okay," that I saw the shift. Not just in how they treated me, but in how I treated myself. I stopped letting their hurtful words define me and took control of my narrative. So here's what I want you to take away from this. The next time someone cracks a joke at your expense, don't just laugh it off. Pause for a moment. Ask yourself, is this funny, or is there something deeper at play here? And if you sense that the latter is true, don't be afraid to call them out. Yes, it might feel awkward. Yes, it might even risk the end of a relationship. But let me remind you, your self-respect, your dignity, your worth, these are far more valuable than someone else's misguided attempt at humor. Life is simply too short to keep people around who fail to see your value. If their version of friendship involves constantly poking at your flaws, then it's time to walk away. True friends, the ones who care about you, will never need to bring you down to lift themselves. They'll help you grow, not make you feel small. 2. They give compliments that sting like insults. We've all experienced it at some point, haven't we? Someone offers what they think is a compliment, but instead of feeling elated or proud, you're left feeling confused, hurt, or downright insulted. It's like being handed a velvet glove that hides a punch, or a sugar-coated barb. It's the kind of remark that makes you stop dead in your tracks, your mind racing with the question, wait, was that supposed to be a compliment, or was there an insult buried in there somewhere? And here's the harsh, undeniable truth. More often than not, it's both. These backhanded compliments are disguised attacks, wrapped in kindness, but laced with hidden barbs meant to keep you in check. I'll never forget a moment that shook me to my core. I was pouring my heart and soul into a project that I was truly proud of, one that I had worked tirelessly on for weeks, if not months. It wasn't just any project, it was the project. The one I had invested so much of myself into, and in my mind, it represented the culmination of my growth and hard work. So, naturally, when I finally shared it with a group of colleagues, people I considered friends, even supporters, I thought they'd celebrate with me. But then came a comment that left me stunned. One colleague, someone I believed was in my corner, smiled and said, "Wow, this is pretty good for someone like you." Those words stung like a slap in the face. At first, I thought maybe I was just being sensitive, but as I stood there, those last few words, "for someone like you," echoed in my head. What did they mean by that? Was I somehow not supposed to be capable of doing good work? Was I being measured by a lower standard simply because of who I was, where I came from, or what they assumed about me? If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. That's the sinister thing about these compliments. They're rarely just about lifting you up. They're loaded with agendas, with tiny jabs designed to remind you of your place, to keep you from outgrowing your boundaries. It's a power play, plain and simple. They're saying, "Oh, I see you're trying, but let's not forget who's really in charge here." They might act like they're offering you praise, but in reality, they're working to diminish your self-worth, to make you doubt your abilities, and to ensure you don't rise too high. It's toxic. It's subtle. And yet, it's wrapped in such a seemingly pleasant package that, for a moment, you might even question yourself instead of recognizing the hostility disguised as kindness. What I've come to realize is that people who give backhanded compliments are often projecting their insecurities. They see your potential and your brilliance, and it scares them. It threatens their sense of control. So, they throw in those backhanded comments to keep you questioning yourself, to prevent you from seeing just how far you can go. They're pulling you back, but doing it in a way that makes you wonder if you've somehow misunderstood the situation. It's like they're offering you a hug while simultaneously holding you down, ensuring you don't break free from their grasp. And here's where it gets even messier. We've all done it at some point. Maybe not consciously, maybe not with malice, but we've all allowed our insecurities to creep into our words and affect someone else. Maybe in a fleeting moment, we've made a remark that subtly reminded someone else of their place, just to reaffirm our fragile sense of self-worth. It's a deeply human flaw, one that I've caught myself doing as well. And yet, there's a deeper truth we all need to confront. We don't have to accept this disguised hostility. We don't have to internalize it. We have the power to recognize it for what it truly is, a reflection of their insecurities, not a reflection of our worth. So when someone says, "You're smarter than you look," or "This is good, considering you're new at this," don't just nod along and let those words fester inside. Don't swallow it whole like some bitter pill you have no choice but to choke down. Call it out. Confront the insult head-on, even if it makes things uncomfortable. The moment you do that, you take away their power over your self-image. You stop allowing them to dictate how you see yourself, and instead, you take back control over your worth. Because, let's be honest, if you don't stand up to these subtle digs, you're permitting them to keep playing their game, to keep you in their box. Now, when I hear those backhanded compliments, I don't let them slide. I'll look the person in the eye and ask, "Thanks, but what exactly do you mean by that?" It forces them to face the truth of their words. And you know what? More often than not, they squirm. They're caught off guard, suddenly aware that you're not buying into their veiled hostility. It's incredible how quickly the tone shifts when they realize they can't manipulate you with a backhanded compliment anymore. So here's the real takeaway. Don't let anyone define your worth with their veiled negativity. Whether it's a well-meaning friend who doesn't know any better, a colleague who's jealous of your success, or even a family member who might mean well but is too caught up in their insecurities, remember this: your worth isn't up for negotiation. Compliments should uplift you, not make you second-guess yourself. If someone's words leave you wondering about your abilities, it's time to ask yourself what their intentions are. Life is far too short to waste on people who can't genuinely celebrate your achievements without trying to bring you down. Surround yourself with those who see you for who you truly are and are brave enough to tell you so, without strings attached. 3. They subtly exclude you from plans. It's the small, seemingly insignificant moments that hurt the most. The ones that seem like they shouldn't matter, but somehow they do. Like discovering that your so-called friends have conveniently forgotten to invite you to that dinner, that party, or that weekend getaway. At first, they'll tell you it was just an oversight. Maybe they'll say it was a last-minute thing, or worse, they'll assume you were already too busy to join. But deep down, we know this isn't a mere accident. These aren't misunderstandings or coincidences. No, this is a form of social exclusion so subtle, so sneaky, that it almost feels like a whisper, like a betrayal disguised as a mistake. I've been on the receiving end of this more times than I'd like to admit. The sting of seeing photos pop up on my phone, pictures of a group of friends laughing, smiling, and enjoying a moment together, a moment I would have given anything to be a part of. The worst part? No one even mentioned it beforehand. Not a single word. When I casually brought it up later, they hit me with the usual excuses. "Oh, we thought you were too busy," or "It was such a last-minute plan." But in my heart, I knew the truth. If they wanted me there, if I truly mattered to them, they would have made sure I knew about it. They would have made the effort to include me because that's what friends do. They include you because they care. Here's where it gets painful though, the real kicker that no one wants to face. This exclusion isn't just some thoughtless mistake. It's not a product of forgetfulness. No, it's deliberate. It's a silent message being sent in the most passive way possible. They don't want you there, but they're too cowardly to say it outright. Instead, they hope you'll quietly fade out of the picture, that you'll start to feel less and less important until you're eventually out of the loop entirely. It's passive-aggressive, it's insidious, and above all, it's painful. The thing is, Most people don't like to talk about this. It's much easier to pretend it's not happening, to keep swallowing the hollow excuses they give you than to acknowledge the painful truth. You're being pushed out, little by little. I know it's hard. It was hard for me too. For a long time, I just let it slide, hoping that maybe next time, things would be different. Maybe, just maybe, I'd finally be included. But it took time, and it took a lot of heartache, for me to realize that by staying silent, I was allowing myself to be treated like an afterthought. I was letting them decide my place in their lives, instead of deciding for myself where I truly belonged. And that, my friends, was a lesson I had to learn the hard way. So, I did something that felt like a punch in the gut. I started calling them out. I told them, "Hey, I saw you guys went out last weekend. Why didn't anyone invite me?" At first, it felt so awkward, so uncomfortable. It made everything feel messy, like I was rocking the boat. But you know what? It forced them to confront their behavior. It forced them to face the truth. And slowly, but surely, things began to change. Some got defensive, others tried to apologize, but the truth remained undeniable. I wasn't going to stand by quietly while they excluded me. Not anymore. Here's the crucial lesson. If people truly want you in their lives, they'll make the effort to include you, no matter how last minute the plans might be. If they don't, it's time to seriously reconsider the worth of those relationships. You deserve to be surrounded by people who see your value, people who don't make you feel like you're constantly chasing after their approval, their attention, or their affection. True friends don't forget about you. True friends make sure you're part of their world because they genuinely enjoy your presence. They make you feel seen. They make you feel heard. So, if you find yourself in this cycle of being subtly excluded, don't just brush it off. Don't convince yourself it was a mistake. Confront it. Ask the hard questions. Demand the answers, even if they're not what you want to hear. Because, let me tell you, it's far better to know where you stand, to face the uncomfortable truth, than to keep wondering why you're always the one left behind. And above all else, remember this. You are not a backup option. You are a priority. You deserve to be treated like one. So, surround yourself with people who do just that, who treat you with the love, respect, and kindness you've always deserved. For, they're busy only when it comes to you. We've all heard it countless times, right? "I'm so busy these days, I'm sorry, I just can't hang out." It feels like the perfect, convenient excuse. After all, who isn't busy in this fast-paced world? But then, something starts to nag at you, a sinking feeling that's hard to ignore. You begin to notice the pattern. They're always available for everyone else, posting pictures of their outings, laughing with mutual friends, attending events, or spending time with others. But when it comes to you, suddenly, they're swamped. And the more it happens, the more you start to wonder. Why is it that they're never too busy for everyone else, but always too busy for you? Here's the cold, hard truth. They're not too busy. They're just too busy for you. Trust me, I've been in that position more times than I can count, and let me tell you, it's painful. It's gut-wrenching to keep reaching out, hoping to reconnect, only to be met with empty excuses. I remember trying so hard to reconnect with a friend I once was so close to, only to be met with line after line of, "I'm working late," or "I'm just really swamped right now. Let's plan for next week." Yet, somehow, I would scroll through social media and see them out with other people, having a blast. It's like they could always make time for anyone and everyone except me. And in those moments, my heart felt heavy with the realization that I was no longer a priority. That feeling is not easy to bear. It took me way too long to finally admit what was going on. The pattern was so glaring, so obvious. They didn't want to prioritize me. The message was clear, even though they didn't have to say it outright. I wasn't important enough for them to carve out time. And I think that's one of the hardest lessons to learn. especially when we've been conditioned to accept busy as a valid excuse for neglect. We've grown up believing that if someone tells us they're busy, we should just accept it. But here's the raw truth. People make time for the things and the people who matter to them. If they're constantly busy when it comes to you, it's not their schedule that's the issue, it's their priorities. And that's a tough pill to swallow because it forces us to face the painful reality. Maybe we're just not as important to them as they are to us. The most difficult truth of all is that busy is often a polite, sugar-coated way of saying, "I just don't want to spend time with you." It's easier for someone to hide behind their busy schedule than to admit, in plain words, that they simply don't want you in their life. It's their way of distancing themselves without having to confront the awkwardness of being honest. It's passive-aggressive behavior, keeping you around just enough to make you feel like you still matter, but not running in the effort to show you that you do. They don't want to give you closure. They want to keep you on standby, just in case, but without truly investing in the relationship. That's a heartbreaking position to be in. I've been on both sides of this equation. I've been the one to make excuses, to avoid confronting someone when I knew deep down that I had outgrown the friendship. But being on the receiving end of this, feeling the sting of being sidelined, taught me an invaluable lesson. It's far better to be honest, no matter how uncomfortable it feels, than to string someone along with excuses. It was an incredibly difficult conversation, but when I finally confronted my friend about their constant busyness, it was a wake-up call. That awkward moment brought clarity, and it helped me realize that I deserved to invest my time and energy into relationships where I was genuinely valued. The deeper truth here is this: your time, your energy, and your heart are precious. You deserve to be surrounded by people who want to make time for you, who genuinely enjoy your company, not just when it's convenient for them, but because they value you. And if someone is always too busy for you, it's time to reassess the relationship. Don't be afraid to let go of people who don't treat you with the respect and love you deserve. It's painful, but there is strength in acknowledging when someone has moved on, even when it hurts to admit it. Sometimes we hold on to people out of habit, out of nostalgia, or fear of being alone. But there's power in letting go, in recognizing that you deserve more than someone's leftover time. It's not about being needy or demanding. It's about valuing yourself enough to walk away from those who refuse to value you. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment below to let me know that you are still here with me. You deserve relationships that nourish your soul, not just leave you waiting in the wings. And you're worth so much more than that. Don't settle. 5. They avoid physical contact like the plague. Let's talk about something that most of us try to ignore, the elephant in the room: physical contact. Or, more precisely, the absence of it. It's one of those things we often overlook, but the truth is that physical touch is essential to human interaction. It's how we connect, show affection, and build trust. We're not just talking about romantic relationships here. This applies to friends, family, colleagues, anyone we interact with on a personal level. And yet, when someone consistently goes out of their way to avoid even the most basic forms of touch, like a handshake or a pat on the back, it's a sign that something deeper is at play. It's uncomfortable, it's painful to acknowledge, but it's also a crucial piece of the puzzle when it comes to understanding human relationships. I'll be honest, I've been there. I remember a colleague, a person who always seemed so warm and open with everyone else, but when it came to me, it was like I was invisible. Every time I reached out for a handshake or a friendly gesture, it was like they physically recoiled from me, as though I was carrying some invisible plague. At first, I thought I was imagining things. I convinced myself that maybe it was just my insecurity, that I was overthinking their actions. But then, I started noticing the pattern. They were perfectly fine with everyone else, yet with me, they would stiffen, step back, or avoid any form of touch. It wasn't a random quirk. It was deliberate. And as much as I didn't want to admit it, it made me feel rejected. It made me feel unwanted. It's hard to admit, But when someone avoids physical contact with you, it's not just a personal preference. No, it's more than that. It's their way of saying they're not comfortable with you, not just physically, but emotionally too. Sure, we all have our boundaries. Not everyone is touchy-feely, and that's okay. But when this avoidance is selective, it speaks volumes. If they're happy to hug others but freeze when you try to make a simple connection, it's a red flag. It's not about you being a bad person. It's about them creating distance, sending a message that they don't feel close to you. And the hardest part? They might not be willing to admit it, but their body language says it all. It's a painful truth to face, but I've learned that we've all been on both sides of this. Maybe you found yourself stepping back from someone's touch, feeling an instinctive need for space because something just wasn't right. Or maybe you've been the one who's felt the sting of rejection, wondering why someone you care about seems to flinch every time you get too close. It's uncomfortable, isn't it? It's awkward, it's hurtful, and it's often the first sign that something's not quite right in the relationship. The deeper truth here, though, is that physical contact is an essential part of human connection. It's through touch that we show warmth, vulnerability, and trust. So when someone avoids it, they're not just saying, "I don't want to touch you." They're saying, "I don't want to be close to you, I don't want to be vulnerable with you, and I'm building walls." I've learned to pay attention to these subtle cues, even though it's not always easy. There was a time when I brushed off the signs, telling myself that maybe it was just a personality trait, or maybe they were just going through something. But as I reflected on it, I couldn't ignore the truth. I started asking myself, why do they avoid me? Why is there this distance between us? And when I finally confronted it, it led to some tough conversations. Conversations that I wasn't ready for, but ones that needed to happen. In some cases, it ended relationships. But in others, it opened up a path to deeper understanding. And in all cases, it freed me from the painful uncertainty of wondering why things didn't feel right. Here's the bottom line. Don't ignore the signs. If someone consistently avoids physical contact with you, it's not just a matter of personal preference. It's a reflection of their feelings and their comfort level with you. And though it may be uncomfortable to face, acknowledging it will lead you to a better understanding of the relationship. You owe it to yourself to confront the truth, even if it's difficult. It might strengthen the bond, or it might reveal that the relationship isn't as strong as you hoped. But either way, facing the truth is always better than living in denial. At the end of the day, you deserve relationships where physical contact doesn't have to be avoided. Where a hug, a handshake, or even just sitting close isn't a source of discomfort but a natural way to bond. Those small, everyday gestures are what build trust and intimacy. So, if someone consistently avoids them with you, take note. It's a sign that something's not right. And don't be afraid to ask tough questions, even if it means making difficult decisions. Life is far too short to be surrounded by people who keep you at a distance, literally and figuratively. You deserve more than that. You deserve closeness, warmth, and the freedom to connect without fear of rejection. 6. They disappear when you need support. Let's not sugarcoat it. Nothing truly exposes the depth of a relationship like a crisis. When life throws its hardest punches, when you're standing at your lowest, that's when the real test begins. It's easy for someone to be there when things are light and carefree, but when the storm hits, when you need them most, that's when you'll truly discover who's got your back. And let's be real, when someone vanishes just when you need them, it's not merely a small inconvenience. It feels like a betrayal of the deepest kind. I can speak from experience here. I've been through that gut-wrenching realization, and let me tell you, it's a feeling I'll never forget. There was a time in my life when everything seemed to fall apart. I was dealing with something incredibly personal, something that shook me to my very core. It felt like my world was crashing down, and all I could do was reach out to the people I trusted most. I thought, surely, these were the ones who would lift me when I was drowning. So I waited, and waited, and waited. But all I got was silence. A complete and utter absence of the support I had given so freely in the past. The excuses came fast and furious. I'm so swamped at work, I'm really busy right now, or I'll check in with you later. You know what's coming, right? They never checked in. They didn't show up, not once. It was as if, suddenly, I didn't matter enough to them. My pain was too much for them to handle, so they chose to turn their backs. It wasn't just disappointing. It felt like being stabbed in the chest by those I had once trusted the most. Now, I know some might say, oh, they're just busy, or they didn't know how to help. But here's the harsh truth. People make time for what they care about. And when it comes to relationships, real support is never about convenience. It's about showing up when you're not wanted, when you're tired, when it's uncomfortable, and when it's hardest. Those people who vanish at your lowest, they're telling you, in the cruelest way possible, that your struggles don't matter to them. They'd rather keep their distance than be there for you in your darkest hour. And that's a tough pill to swallow. It makes you question everything you believe about those people. The ones you gave your energy, your time, your love, your support to without hesitation. But when the tables were turned, when it was your turn to need them, they weren't there. It made me question their sincerity, and I realized something heartbreaking but true. Not everyone who smiles in your face is truly in your corner. Let me be clear. True support isn't about convenience. It's about those who stand by you when the road gets rocky and when it feels like the world is crumbling around you. True friends don't ghost you when your life falls apart. They're the ones who roll up their sleeves, even when it's messy, and they're not afraid to get their hands dirty to help you find your footing again. The ones who disappear. They're not just lacking empathy, they're revealing their true colors. They're showing you that, in the grand scheme of things, you were never as important to them as they led you to believe. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. I'll never forget the gut-wrenching disappointment when I realized that the same people I had been there for, during their heartbreaks, their family problems, their career setbacks, couldn't even return the favor when I needed them most. It was like being slapped in the face by reality. But, strangely, it was also a gift. A harsh lesson, but a lesson nonetheless. Not everyone who walks into your life with a smile is worthy of your trust. Here's the deeper truth. Support is the very foundation of meaningful relationships. It's easy to be around when life is smooth sailing, but the real test of any relationship is how people respond when things go off course. If someone disappears when you need them the most, they're not just failing you. They're showing you that they never truly cared enough to be there in the first place. And that's okay. That's their loss. But here's where the real strength comes in. Don't let their absence make you bitter. Let it make you stronger. Use it as a powerful filter to weed out the ones who don't deserve a place in your life. Focus on the ones who stay, who check in, who show up, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's uncomfortable. Those are the ones who deserve your energy. Those are the relationships worth nurturing, cherishing, and protecting. Lives is too short to waste time on people who will only be around for the good times, but not when the storm clouds roll in. In the end, the ones who stick with you through thick and thin, they're the ones you hold close. They're the ones who matter. As for those who disappear when you need them most, let them go. They've shown you their true selves, and it's not the kind of company you want to keep. Embrace the ones who stand by you in the hardest moments, and you'll realize that, in the end, they're the ones who will make all the difference in your life. 7. They gossip about you behind your back. Gossip. It's that silent killer in our social circles, a poison that spreads with terrifying speed and leaves behind a trail of destruction. It's like wildfire, scorching the earth beneath it, consuming everything in its path, leaving you to pick up the charred remains of your relationships. And what's worse, gossip is rarely the innocent, light-hearted chatter it's made out to be. No, when someone you trust opens their mouth behind your back, it's never just harmless gossip. It's a deliberate betrayal. It's a breach of trust so deep, it can leave scars that linger for years. I've felt the sting of gossip myself, and let me tell you, there are few things more gut-wrenching than realizing someone you called a friend has been speaking about you behind your back. I once confided in someone who I believed understood me, someone who I thought I could trust with the most vulnerable parts of my life. I poured out my heart, sharing my burdens in the hope of finding empathy and understanding. Instead, what I got was something much darker. Within days, my private struggles were twisted, exaggerated, and spread through the grapevine, a distorted version of me turning into some sort of entertainment for others. It was as if every intimate detail I had shared was taken, twisted, and then used as ammunition against me. That person, who I thought was my confidant, had turned my vulnerability into a spectacle, leaving me to pick up the broken pieces of my dignity. The truth we don't want to admit is this: gossip is rarely just an innocent outpouring of emotions or idle conversation. It's a weapon. A weapon people use to elevate themselves by tearing you down. It's about control and power. They're playing a game in which your reputation is the prize, and the rules are built on deceit and manipulation. And they don't even dare to face you, to speak to you directly. No, they'd rather hide behind their words, like cowards, talking about you as if you aren't there to defend yourself. It's not just hurtful, it's toxic. It erodes the very foundation of trust, which is the cornerstone of any meaningful relationship. Without trust, what are we left with? Just empty exchanges, shallow connections, and the slow, painful decay of something that was once real. And when the damage is done, it's not just your reputation that suffers, it's the deep, unseen wounds to your heart that will take the longest to heal. As we wrap up today's discussion, I want to take a moment to reflect on everything we've learned so far. We've explored how gossip isn't just harmless chatter. It's a betrayal that can tear apart relationships, destroy trust, and leave lasting emotional scars. But it's also a reminder of the importance of protecting your heart, your dignity, and your boundaries. So, I'd love to hear from you. What's one thing you've learned today that you'll bring into your own life and practice moving forward? Drop a comment below this video and share your thoughts. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to leave your comment, like, share, and of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support means everything, and together, we can continue to build a community of understanding, growth, and genuine connections. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to hearing from you.